Keisha Williams stood frozen outside the restaurant's back door, her uniform still damp with spilled coffee, and her hands shaking as she clutched her final paycheck. The words her manager had screamed at her just moments before echoed in her head. "You're nothing but trouble, Keisha. Always helping the wrong people, always making excuses. You're fired." The worst part wasn't losing her job at Mama Lou's diner, though God knows she needed every dollar. The worst part was knowing her 8-year-old daughter Amara would come home from school, expecting her usual after-school snack and homework help, and instead would find her mama crying at the kitchen table again. This was the third job Keisha had lost in 6 months, and the rent was already 2 weeks late. She looked back through the window at the elderly homeless man she'd given free food to earlier that morning. He was gone now, probably chased away by her now former manager, but she could still see his grateful smile when she'd handed him that plate of eggs and toast. Her grandmother had always taught her that helping others was never wrong, even when it cost you something. But right now, standing in the February cold with empty pockets and an emptier future, Keisha wondered if her grandmother had ever faced losing everything for doing what was right. The sound of her phone buzzing broke through her thoughts. A text from her landlord. "Rent was due yesterday. Pay by Friday or you're out." Today was Wednesday. Keisha closed her eyes and felt the tears she'd been holding back finally start to fall. She had exactly $47 to her name, and that wasn't even enough to feed Amara for the week, let alone pay the $800 they owed. As she walked to the bus stop, her mind raced through possibilities. Her sister Denise was already helping with babysitting and couldn't spare any money. Her mother lived on disability checks that barely covered her own needs. The church had a food bank, but they couldn't help with rent. Every option led to the same dead end. She and Amara were about to be homeless, and it was all because she'd shown kindness to a stranger who looked hungry. The bus ride home to their small apartment in West Oakland took 45 minutes, giving Keisha plenty of time to practice the words she'd used to tell her daughter they might have to leave their home. How do you explain to an 8-year-old that sometimes doing the right thing makes everything go wrong? How do you tell her that the world doesn't always reward kindness the way the storybooks say it should? When she finally climbed the 3 flights of stairs to their apartment, her legs felt like lead. She could hear Amara's voice through the thin walls, probably talking to her stuffed animals or working on homework. That little girl trusted her mama to keep them safe, to keep a roof over their heads, to somehow make everything work out. And Keisha was about to let her down in the biggest way possible. She put her key in the lock and took a deep breath. Whatever happened next, she'd face it head-on. She'd always been a fighter, had to be, growing up in East Oakland with a single mother who worked 3 jobs just to keep food on the table. She'd gotten her GED while pregnant with Amara, had worked her way through community college while raising a baby alone. She'd survived Amara's father walking out when things got tough, had survived her own father's death from cancer when she was just 22. But this felt different. This felt like the kind of breaking point where something inside you either gets stronger or snaps completely. As she opened the door and heard Amara call out, "Mama, is that you?" Keisha realized she was about to find out which one it would be. The apartment was small but clean, filled with Amara's artwork on the refrigerator and the smell of the vanilla candle they lit every evening to make the place feel more like home. Amara came running, her pigtails bouncing and her school uniform slightly wrinkled from a day of learning and playing. She was everything good in Keisha's world, bright, curious, kind-hearted, and completely unaware that their life was about to fall apart. "How was work today, Mama?" Amara asked, wrapping her arms around Keisha's waist. "Did you make lots of tips?" Keisha held her daughter tight, breathing in the scent of her hair and feeling the solid warmth of her small body. This was what mattered. This was what she'd been fighting for all these years, and somehow, some way, she'd keep fighting for it now. "We need to talk, baby girl," Keisha said softly, leading Amara to their worn but comfortable couch. "Mama's got some news, and I need you to be my brave girl, okay?" But before she could say another word, there was a knock at the door. 3 firm knocks that seemed to echo through their small space like a promise or a threat. Keisha looked at the door, then at her daughter's curious face, and wondered if this was their landlord coming early to deliver bad news in person. She had no idea that the person standing on the other side of that door was about to change everything. Keisha approached the door cautiously, motioning for Amara to stay on the couch. Through the peephole, she saw a woman she didn't recognize, well-dressed, maybe in her 50s, with kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in an elegant bun. "Definitely not the landlord. Can I help you?" Keisha called through the door. "Ms. Williams, my name is Dorothy Jefferson. I believe you helped my father this morning at Mama Lou's diner. Could we talk for a moment?" Keisha's heart sank. The homeless man's family had found her. Maybe he'd gotten sick from the food, or maybe they were angry she'd encouraged him somehow. She unlocked the door but kept the chain on, opening it just a crack. "Look, I'm sorry if I caused any trouble," Keisha began. "Your father looked hungry and I just thought—" "You gave him breakfast when he hadn't eaten in 2 days," Dorothy interrupted gently. "You treated him like a human being when others just looked right through him. I'm not here to cause trouble, Ms. Williams. I'm here to thank you." Something in the woman's voice made Keisha remove the chain and open the door wider. Dorothy was indeed well-dressed. Her coat looked expensive, and her shoes were the kind Keisha had only seen in magazines. But her eyes were red-rimmed like she'd been crying. "Is your father okay?" Keisha asked. "That's complicated." "May I come in? I promise I'm not here to hurt you or your daughter. I just need to explain some things." Amara had wandered over, curious about their visitor. She pressed against Keisha's side, studying Dorothy with the open interest of a child. "You have a beautiful daughter," Dorothy said, smiling at Amara. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Amara," the little girl replied. "Are you here about the man Mama helped? She helps lots of people. She gave Mr. Rodriguez downstairs soup when he was sick, and she always lets Mrs. Chen borrow sugar." Dorothy's smile widened. "Is that right? Your mama sounds like a very special person." Keisha felt heat rise in her cheeks. "It's just being neighborly, nothing special about it." "I think you'd be surprised," Dorothy said quietly. "May I sit down? This might take a while to explain." Against her better judgment, Keisha gestured to their small dining table. She made coffee, the cheap kind, not the good stuff she couldn't afford, and sat across from Dorothy while Amara colored nearby, pretending not to listen but clearly taking in every word. "The man you helped this morning," Dorothy began, "his name is Robert Jefferson. He's my father and well, he's been having some problems lately." "Is he sick?" Keisha asked. He seemed a little confused, but he was polite. "Real polite." Dorothy nodded. "He has early-stage dementia. Some days he's completely himself, sharp as ever. Other days—" she paused, gathering herself. "Other days he wanders off. He forgets where he is, who he is." Yesterday was one of those days. Keisha felt a chill of understanding. How long was he missing? 3 days. We had the police looking, private investigators, everyone. He just disappeared from his room at the care facility. We found him this afternoon because someone at the diner told us a young woman had been kind to him. They described you, and one of the other waitresses gave us your name." "I'm so sorry," Keisha said. "I had no idea. I just saw an elderly man who looked hungry and cold." "Don't apologize," Dorothy said firmly. "You probably saved his life. Do you know what most people did when they saw him? They crossed the street. They acted like he was invisible, but you saw a person who needed help and you helped him." Keisha shifted uncomfortably. Anyone would have done the same thing. "No," Dorothy said, shaking her head. They wouldn't have. And that's what makes this so remarkable. She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. I heard you lost your job today because of what you did for my father. Keisha's face burned with embarrassment. Who told you that? The same waitress who gave me your name. She said your manager fired you for giving away free food. Dorothy slid the envelope across the table. This won't bring your job back, but it might help until you find something else. Keisha stared at the envelope without touching it. I can't take your money. I didn't help your father expecting anything in return. I know you didn't. That's exactly why I want to give it to you. Dorothy's voice was gentle but insistent. My father is a proud man, Ms. Williams. Even with his condition, he knows when someone treats him with dignity. He talked about you all afternoon, the kind lady who called him sir, and made sure his coffee was hot. Tears stung Keisha's eyes. She thought about the bills on her kitchen counter, about Amara's worried face when she'd said they needed to talk, about the text from the landlord. I really can't, she whispered. It wouldn't be right. Dorothy was quiet for a moment, studying Keisha's face. Then she said something that made Keisha look up in surprise. What if I told you this wasn't charity? What if I told you this was something you earned? I don't understand. Dorothy smiled, but there was something secretive in her expression. Ms. Williams, how much do you know about Jefferson Industries? The name was familiar, the way big company names sometimes are. They make computers, electronics. Among other things, yes. It's a Fortune 500 company. My father built it from nothing, starting with a small electronics repair shop in West Oakland back in 1962. Keisha nodded politely, not sure where this was going. He always said that success wasn't about how much money you made, but about how you treated people when no one was watching. He built his entire business philosophy around that idea. Dorothy leaned forward. What you did today, showing kindness to a stranger who had nothing to offer you in return, that's exactly the kind of person my father has been looking for. Looking for? We've been searching for the right person to head up our new community outreach program. Someone who understands what it means to help others, even when it costs them something. Someone with real heart, not just good intentions. Keisha felt the world tilt slightly. Are you offering me a job? I'm offering you an opportunity, Dorothy said carefully. But first, there's something else you need to know about my father, something that might change how you see this whole situation. She reached into her purse again and pulled out a newspaper clipping. The headline read, Tech billionaire Robert Jefferson announces retirement plans. Keisha stared at the photo, the same kind eyes, the same gentle smile, but this version of the man she'd served breakfast to was wearing an expensive suit and standing in front of a corporate logo. The man you helped this morning, Dorothy said quietly, is worth about $3 billion. Keisha stared at the newspaper photo, then at Dorothy, then back at the photo. The room felt like it was spinning slightly. $3 billion, she whispered. Amara looked up from her coloring. That's a lot, right, Mama? That's a very lot, baby girl, Keisha managed. Dorothy chuckled softly. I know it's a shock. It was a shock to everyone at the diner, too, once we explained who he was. Your former manager looked like he might faint. But he was, Keisha struggled to find the words. He was dressed like he didn't have anything. His clothes were old, his shoes had holes. Those are his favorite clothes, Dorothy explained. He's worn that same jacket for 15 years, says it's the most comfortable thing he owns. Even before the dementia, he never cared much about looking wealthy. Said fancy clothes just made people treat you different, and he wanted to know who folks really were. Keisha thought about how she'd automatically warmed up his coffee, how she'd made sure to give him extra butter for his toast, how she'd called him sir, even though he looked like he couldn't afford to tip her. She treated him the same way she treated all her customers, with basic human respect. "He does this sometimes," Dorothy continued. "Even before he got sick, he'd disappear for a few hours, dress down and go places where nobody knew who he was. Said it kept him grounded, reminded him where he came from. But with the dementia, those little trips became more dangerous. He'd forget how to get home." "How did you find him today?" "We tracked his phone. He always carries it, even when he doesn't remember what it's for. When we got to the diner, he was sitting outside on the bench, still talking about the nice lady who'd made sure he had a good breakfast." Dorothy's voice grew thick with emotion. "He said you were the first person in 3 days who'd looked him in the eye." Keisha felt tears starting again. "I just saw someone who needed help." "Exactly. And that's why my father wants to meet with you properly when he's having one of his good days." Dorothy pulled out a business card. "This is my card. I'm the Vice President of Community Relations at Jefferson Industries. We've been developing a program to help single mothers get back on their feet, job training, childcare assistance, housing support. My father insisted that whoever ran the program had to understand what it was really like to struggle." Keisha took the card with trembling fingers. It was heavy cardstock, embossed with gold lettering. Dorothy Jefferson, it read. "Vice President, Community Relations." "You want me to run a program?" Keisha asked. "But I don't have experience with that kind of thing. I've just been waitressing and retail jobs." "You have experience being a single mother working multiple jobs to keep your family together," Dorothy corrected. "You have experience making hard choices and still choosing kindness. That's exactly the kind of experience we need." Amara had abandoned her coloring completely now and was listening with wide eyes. "Does this mean we don't have to move, Mama?" Keisha's heart clenched. "Baby, we're just talking right now." "The position starts at $75,000 a year," Dorothy said quietly. "Plus full benefits, including health insurance and childcare assistance. There's also a housing allowance to help you get settled somewhere safe and stable." Keisha couldn't speak. $75,000 was more money than she'd ever dreamed of making. It was more than double what she'd made at her best job ever. "Why?" she finally managed. "Why would you offer this to someone you just met?" Dorothy was quiet for a long moment, looking out the window at the Oakland skyline. "Can I tell you a story about my father?" Keisha nodded. "When I was about Amara's age, we were poor, really poor. My father was working 2 jobs trying to save money to start his business, and my mother cleaned houses to help make ends meet. One winter, we couldn't afford to pay our heating bill. It was so cold in our apartment that we all slept in the same bed just to stay warm." Amara scooted closer, drawn in by the story. "One day, a man came to our door. He was wearing a nice coat and driving a fancy car. He said he'd heard about our situation from someone at my mother's church. He handed my father an envelope with enough money to pay the heating bill and buy groceries for a month." "That was nice of him," Amara said. "It was, but you know what the best part was? He didn't make my parents feel ashamed. He didn't act like he was better than us. He said his own family had been helped once when he was young, and now he was passing it on. He told my father, 'When you're successful someday, remember this feeling and help someone else.'" Dorothy turned back to Keisha. "My father never forgot that man's kindness. When Jefferson Industries started making real money, the first thing Dad did was set up a fund to help families in situations like ours had been. He's been doing it quietly for 30 years. And now he wants to make it bigger. He wants to make it better, more personal. He's tired of just writing checks. He wants to actually change lives. But he needed to find the right person to make it happen. Someone who understood what it felt like to need help and still chose to help others." Keisha looked down at the business card, then at her daughter's hopeful face. "What would I have to do?" "Visit families who apply for assistance. Assess their needs, connect them with resources, follow up to make sure they're getting the help they need. Eventually, you'd help design and expand the program to reach more people. Dorothy paused. There would be training, of course. You'd work closely with our existing team to learn the systems. But mostly, you'd do what you've been doing your whole life, caring about people. I don't know anything about running programs or working in an office. You know about struggle. You know about dignity. You know about helping people without making them feel small. Dorothy leaned forward. Ms. Williams, those are the skills that matter most for this job. Keisha felt something she hadn't felt in months, hope. Real, tangible hope that maybe things could get better, that maybe all the hard times had been leading to something good. When would you need an answer? Take the weekend to think about it. Come in Monday morning to meet with my father. He should be having a good day then. If you both feel like it's a good fit, we can talk about start dates and logistics. Dorothy stood to leave, then turned back. There's one more thing. My father wanted me to give you this. She handed Keisha the envelope she tried to give her earlier. He said anyone who loses their job for doing the right thing shouldn't have to worry about rent while they're deciding about their future. This time, Keisha took the envelope. Inside was a check for $5,000. I can't possibly. Yes, you can, Dorothy said firmly, and you will. Because somewhere out there is another single mother having the worst day of her life, and if you take this job, you might be the person who helps turn it around. After Dorothy left, Keisha sat at her kitchen table staring at the check and the business card while Amara chattered excitedly about the nice lady and the new job, and whether they could get a bigger apartment with 2 bedrooms. Everything felt surreal, like it was happening to someone else. This morning she'd been fired for giving a hungry man some eggs and toast. Tonight, she might have found the career she'd never dared to dream of. But first, she had to meet Robert Jefferson himself, the billionaire who'd wandered into her diner looking for more than just breakfast. Monday morning arrived gray and drizzly, typical Oakland, weather that made Keisha grateful for the warm coat Dorothy had insisted she buy over the weekend. She stood outside the gleaming Jefferson Industries building in downtown Oakland, 43 stories of glass and steel that seemed to touch the low-hanging clouds. Amara was safely at school, and Keisha's neighbor Mrs. Rodriguez had agreed to pick her up and watch her until Keisha got home. "You go get that job, Mija," Mrs. Rodriguez had said, squeezing Keisha's hands. "That little girl of yours deserves to see her mama shine." The lobby was intimidating, all marble floors and modern art, with a security desk that looked more high-tech than anything Keisha had ever seen. She gave her name to the guard who checked his computer and handed her a visitor's badge. 42nd floor, he said with a smile. "Ms. Jefferson is expecting you." The elevator ride felt like it took forever. Keisha watched the numbers climb higher than she'd ever been in a building, trying to calm her nerves by remembering Dorothy's words. "Just be yourself. That's exactly who my father wants to meet." The 42nd floor was quieter than she'd expected, with soft carpet and artwork that looked expensive but welcoming. Dorothy met her at the elevator, looking professional in a navy suit but with the same kind eyes from Friday night. "How are you feeling?" Dorothy asked as they walked down a hallway lined with photos, company milestones, community events, and what looked like family pictures. "Nervous," Keisha admitted. "I keep thinking this is all some kind of mistake." "It's not a mistake," Dorothy assured her. "My father has been looking forward to this all weekend. Yesterday was one of his best days in months. He spent hours talking about wanting to expand the community program." They stopped at a door marked R. Jefferson Chairman. Dorothy knocked softly and opened it. The office was nothing like what Keisha had expected. Instead of a massive desk and intimidating furniture, it looked more like a comfortable living room. There were bookshelves everywhere, family photos on every surface, and by the window sat Robert Jefferson himself, looking exactly like the man she'd served breakfast to, but cleaner and wearing clothes that actually fit. He stood when they entered, and his face lit up with recognition. "Ms. Williams," he said, coming forward with his hand extended. "I was hoping I'd get to see you again." His grip was firm, his eyes clear and focused. This was definitely the same man, but he seemed completely different, present, alert, engaged. "Mr. Jefferson," Keisha said, still feeling surreal about the whole situation. "I'm glad to see you're okay. I was worried when your daughter told me you'd been missing." "Please call me Robert, and thank you for worrying. It means more than you know." He gestured to a comfortable chair. "Dorothy tells me you might be interested in helping us expand our community outreach work." Keisha sat down, conscious of her simple dress and discount store shoes in this obviously expensive office. "I'm interested, but I'm not sure I'm qualified. I don't have experience with programs like this." Robert settled into the chair across from her. "Tell me about your experience as a single mother." The question caught her off guard. "My experience? How long have you been raising your daughter alone?" "Since she was 6 months old. Her father—" Keisha paused, not sure how much to share. "He decided he wasn't ready for the responsibility." "That must have been difficult." "It was scary," Keisha said honestly. "I was 21, working at a grocery store, living in a studio apartment that cost more than half my paycheck. I didn't know how I was going to manage." "But you did manage." "I had to. Amara was counting on me." Keisha found herself relaxing as Robert listened intently. "I got my GED while she was a baby, then took community college classes at night when I could find babysitters. Worked whatever jobs I could find that had flexible hours." "What was the hardest part?" Keisha thought about it. "The feeling that no matter how hard I worked, I was always one crisis away from losing everything. Like when Amara got sick and I had to miss work to take her to the hospital, so I lost that job. Or when our apartment had a fire and we had to move with 2 days' notice. Every time I started to get ahead, something would happen to knock us back down." Robert nodded. "And through all of that, you still found ways to help other people." "That's just how I was raised. My grandmother always said that being poor didn't mean you had to be selfish." "Your grandmother sounds like a wise woman." "She was." Keisha smiled, thinking of the woman who'd raised her after her own mother struggled with addiction. "She used to say that kindness was free, so there was no excuse not to give it away." Robert exchanged a look with Dorothy. "Ms. Williams, Keisha, I want to tell you why this program matters so much to me." He stood and walked to one of the family photos on his desk. "This is my wife, Margaret. She passed away 5 years ago." He picked up the frame, studying the picture of a beautiful woman with kind eyes. "Before she died, she made me promise that I'd use our success to help families like the one we used to be." "Dorothy told me you grew up poor." "We did. And we never forgot what it felt like to need help and not know where to find it. Margaret always said that the people who knew how to help were the ones who'd needed help themselves." He set the photo down and looked at Keisha. "That's why I need someone like you running this program. Not someone who studied poverty in college, but someone who lived it." "What exactly would I be doing?" Dorothy pulled out a folder. "Right now, we have a fund that provides emergency assistance, help with rent, utilities, medical bills, things like that. But it's not organized well, and we don't follow up to see if people are really getting back on their feet. We want to change that," Robert added. "We want to create a comprehensive program that doesn't just hand out money, but actually helps families build stable lives. Job training, childcare assistance, financial counseling, housing support, whatever it takes." Keisha looked through the folder Dorothy had given her. There were statistics about single mothers in Oakland, information about existing programs, and preliminary plans for the new initiative. How many families would we be helping? To start, maybe 50 to 100. But if it works the way we hope, we'd expand it to other cities, Dorothy said. The goal is to eventually help thousands of families. The scope was overwhelming, and you want me to design and run this. We want you to help us understand what families really need, Robert corrected. You'd work with our existing team to develop the program, then oversee the day-to-day operations. You'd be the one meeting with families, assessing their situations, connecting them with resources. What if I make mistakes? What if I don't know how to help someone? Robert smiled. Then you'll figure it out, the same way you've been figuring everything else out for the past 8 years. The same way you figured out how to make an old man feel human when he was lost and confused. Keisha felt tears starting again. I still can't believe this is real. It's real, Dorothy assured her. The question is, are you ready to take it on? Keisha thought about Amara, about all the nights she'd worried about their future, about all the times she'd helped others even when she could barely help herself. She thought about her grandmother's words about kindness being free, and about Robert Jefferson wandering into her diner looking for more than just breakfast. Yes, she said quietly, I'm ready. Robert's smile was radiant. Then welcome to Jefferson Industries, Keisha Williams. I think you're going to change a lot of lives. Starting with my own, Keisha whispered, and for the first time in years, she truly believed that everything was going to be okay. 6 months later, Keisha stood in the conference room on the 42nd floor, looking out at the faces of the families they'd helped through the new community partnership program. There was Maria, who'd been about to lose her apartment before they connected her with job training and childcare assistance. She was now working as a medical assistant and had just signed a lease on a 2-bedroom place. There was James, a single father who'd been living in his car with his 2 kids. He was finishing his electrician certification and had moved into stable housing 3 months ago. And there was Amara, sitting in the front row wearing a new dress and beaming with pride as she watched her mama present the 6-month program results to the Jefferson Industries Board of Directors. In our first 6 months, Keisha said, clicking to the next slide of her presentation, we've directly assisted 87 families. 63 of those families have achieved stable housing, 51 have found steady employment, and 38 have enrolled in educational or job training programs. The board members nodded approvingly, but Keisha's eyes were on Robert Jefferson, who sat at the head of the table with Dorothy beside him. His good days were becoming less frequent, but today was one of them, and his face glowed with satisfaction. But the numbers don't tell the whole story, Keisha continued. What we've learned is that people don't just need money, they need someone who believes in them, someone who sees their potential instead of just their problems. She clicked to a slide showing photos from their monthly family gatherings, barbecues in the park, where program participants could connect with each other and share resources and encouragement. We've built a community, Keisha said. Families are helping each other now, sharing job leads and babysitting duties and just being there when times get tough. That's something you can't measure in statistics, but it might be the most important thing we've accomplished. When the presentation ended, the board members asked questions and offered congratulations. Several mentioned expanding the program to San Francisco and Sacramento, possibilities that would have terrified Keisha 6 months ago but now filled her with excitement. As the meeting wrapped up, Robert approached her. His movements were slower than they'd been when she first met him, but his smile was just as warm. Margaret would have loved this, he said quietly. She would have loved you. I wish I could have met her. She would have said you reminded her of herself at your age, determined to make things better for everyone around you, even when your own world was falling apart. Dorothy joined them, carrying a manila envelope. "Speaking of making things better, we have something for you." Keisha looked suspicious. "What kind of something?" "The kind that comes with more responsibility and a promotion," Dorothy said with a grin. "How do you feel about becoming the director of community partnerships for the entire West Coast region?" "Director," Keisha's voice squeaked slightly. "The board was impressed with your presentation," Robert explained. "They want to expand the program to 5 more cities over the next 2 years. We need someone to oversee the regional operations." "But I've only been doing this for 6 months." "And in those 6 months, you've proven that heart matters more than experience," Dorothy said. "Besides, you won't be doing it alone. We're building a team of coordinators in each city, people like you who understand what it means to struggle." Keisha opened the envelope and nearly dropped it when she saw the new salary figure. It was enough to give Amara the childhood she deserved, enough to maybe even help other family members who were still struggling. "There's one more thing," Robert said. "We want you to help us establish the Margaret Jefferson Foundation, a nonprofit that will focus specifically on supporting single mothers. You'd be the executive director." "A foundation, with my name on it." "With Margaret's name on it," Robert corrected gently, "but with your vision guiding it." Keisha looked around the conference room where she'd been presenting just minutes ago, then down at her daughter, who was now chatting excitedly with some of the other children who'd come to the meeting. 6 months ago, she'd been serving coffee and trying to figure out how to keep a roof over their heads. Now she was being asked to lead a foundation that could help thousands of families. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Amara called out, having overheard the conversation. "Say yes, Mama, so you can help more families like ours." The room chuckled, and Keisha felt that familiar swell of pride in her daughter's kind heart. "Yes," she said, looking at Robert and Dorothy. "Yes, I'll do it." The celebration that followed was small but meaningful. The board members congratulating her, the families from the program cheering, and Amara practically bouncing with excitement about their new apartment in a neighborhood with good schools and a playground nearby. As the crowd thinned out, Keisha found herself alone with Robert for a moment. He was looking out the window at the Oakland skyline, and she could see in his face that he was having one of those moments where the present felt distant. "Robert," she said gently, "are you okay?" He turned to her, and for a second his eyes were confused. Then they cleared and he smiled. "I was just thinking about that morning at the diner," he said. "I was so lost that day. Not just physically, but I felt like I'd forgotten who I was supposed to be. And then you handed me that plate of eggs and called me sir like I mattered. You did matter, you do matter. You saved me that day, Keisha. Not just from being cold and hungry, but from feeling invisible. From feeling like maybe I'd lost everything that made me who I am." Keisha felt tears starting again, the good kind this time. "You saved me too. You and Dorothy both. You saw something in me that I didn't even know was there." "We saw what was always there," Robert said. "We just gave you a chance to let it shine." Later that evening, as Keisha tucked Amara into bed in their new apartment, 2 bedrooms, just like Amara had dreamed of, her daughter asked the question that had been on her mind all day. "Mama, do you think Mr. Robert knew who he was when you helped him that morning?" Keisha considered this carefully. "I think part of him knew, the part that mattered most." "What part was that?" "The part that remembered what it felt like to need help. The part that recognized kindness when he saw it." Keisha smoothed Amara's hair back from her forehead. "Sometimes people get lost, baby girl, but the good in them never really goes away. Like how you never stopped helping people, even when we didn't have much." "Exactly like that." Amara yawned and snuggled deeper into her new comforter, one she'd picked out herself, covered in stars and moons. "I want to help people too when I grow up, just like you and Mr. Robert." "You already do help people," Keisha said. "Remember when you gave half your lunch to that new girl at school because she forgot hers? Or when you helped Mrs. Rodriguez carry her groceries, even though they were heavy? That's different. That's just being nice." "No, sweetheart, that's exactly what helping people is. It's seeing someone who needs something and choosing to care." Keisha kissed her daughter's forehead. "You've got the biggest heart of anyone I know." As Amara drifted off to sleep, Keisha sat in her new living room and thought about the incredible journey that had brought them here. On her coffee table was a framed photo from the program's celebration, dozens of families smiling together, children playing in the background, adults who'd found hope again after thinking it was lost forever. Her phone buzzed with a text from Dorothy. "Dad wanted me to tell you he's proud of you. He said Margaret would be proud too." Keisha typed back, "Tell him I'm proud to carry on her legacy." The response came quickly. "You're not just carrying it on, you're making it your own." The next morning, Keisha woke up early and made coffee in her new kitchen. Through the window, she could see the Oakland Hills in the distance, painted golden by the sunrise. In a few hours, she'd be at the office, working on plans to expand the program to Los Angeles. Next month, she'd be flying to Seattle to meet with potential partner organizations. Sometimes she still couldn't believe it was real. Sometimes she touched the business cards in her purse. Keisha Williams, Director of Community Partnerships, just to make sure they weren't a dream. But then she'd remember Robert Jefferson's grateful smile when she'd handed him that plate of breakfast, and Dorothy's tears when she'd talked about wanting to honor her mother's memory, and the faces of all the families who'd found stability and hope through their program. She'd remember that everything good in her life had started with a simple choice: to see a hungry man and choose to feed him, even though it cost her something. As she got ready for work, Keisha thought about her grandmother's words. "Kindness is free, so there's no excuse not to give it away." She'd lived by those words through years of struggle, never knowing they would eventually lead her to something extraordinary. Now she had the chance to teach those same words to others, to show families that their circumstances didn't define their worth, that help was available, that someone believed in their potential. Amara padded into the kitchen in her pajamas, still sleepy but smiling. "Morning, Mama. You ready for another day of changing the world?" Keisha laughed and hugged her daughter tight. "One family at a time, baby girl. One family at a time." Outside their window, Oakland was waking up. Somewhere in the city, there were families facing the same struggles Keisha and Amara had faced just 6 months ago. Families wondering how they'd make it through another day, another week, another month. But now there was hope. Now there was a program designed by someone who understood their struggles, led by someone who'd walked in their shoes. Now there were resources and support, and most importantly, someone who believed that everyone deserved a chance to build a better life. As Keisha walked Amara to school and then headed to the Jefferson Industries building, she carried with her the knowledge that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can create the biggest changes. That sometimes helping a stranger can save 2 lives instead of 1. And that sometimes, when you're brave enough to do the right thing even when it costs you everything, the universe finds a way to give you back something even better. The glass doors of the Jefferson Industries building reflected the morning sun as Keisha approached, her heels clicking confidently on the sidewalk. She was no longer the frightened woman who'd stood outside a diner 6 months ago, wondering how she'd tell her daughter they might lose their home. She was Keisha Williams, Director of Community Partnerships. She was the woman who would help launch the Margaret Jefferson Foundation. She was living proof that sometimes the best thing that can happen to you starts with the worst day of your life. And she was just getting started.